Hey, glad you're with me for another Story Time, where I tell my stories from my favorite adventures from the travels around and shooting news and things in my 50 years I've been here on the planet this year. Well, I want to tell you a little bit about some bus trips that I've taken in Mexico. I remember in particular when I was going from Ventosa, which was this little fishing village that had some of the most incredible body surfing of any place I've ever been. It was basically the mountains would just come straight out of the water from here, and so you would go maybe 20 yards off of the beach, and the water would be like 100 feet deep. So during certain times, the waves would be so incredibly powerful. They'd be like 10 foot, that would come in over there. And I remember Kathy and I would be body surfing and stuff, or trying to do body surfing out there. And it would throw you up into these trees and stuff. And in the coral, you get all caught up, and you just kind of crawl back on the beach like, man, I thought this was supposed to be fun, but I can tell you, I've never felt any more helpless than being in that powerful water, that surge where you could think there is absolutely nothing that you can do to stop this. Well, we had spent several days in Ventosa, and then we were going to say, well, let's go and try some other parts and some other beaches. And so we went to this other town that was called Puerto, which means the angel port, which is another kind of it was a little bit more of a touristy place. La Ventosa was, of course, not many tourists and stuff, but it was supposed to be one of the premier places in all of Mexico. And then Pemex, who was their big oil refinery place, decided to build an oil refinery right there, and so the tourists didn't want to come there anymore, which was fine with me, because if there was too many white people, I didn't want to be there anyway. Racist or something, I don't know. But anyway, so we went on this bus to go to Puerto, and it was sort of reminded me a little bit of when we were when I was in Nepal with the Seven Sisters, these hairpin turns, man, because you would get these buses that would just go down these turns, just sliding around the sides and things like this, and they had to go pretty fast downhill because they had to come back uphill, and if they didn't get enough momentum, then they couldn't make it up the hill. So you were just like surfing on this thing. You were just getting thrown back and forth and back and forth. It would kind of freak you out, but you're like, well, we're going to try and make this thing somehow, so you were thinking, well, I guess they know what they're doing. I didn't see but only one wreck on the side of the road, so I figured, well, it must be fairly safe. Well, we got to Puerto and stuff, and it was a beautiful place and things. We finally found a place to stay, and I remember all night long we could hardly sleep because the guy next to us, and of course, now we weren't staying like tourist hotels. We were just staying where the rest of the Mexicans would stay because we were poor, we were just traveling, so anyway, all night like snoring like this, man. I'm like, Kathy, I can't sleep, man. I guess listen. She said, what are we gonna do? And I'm like, I don't know. So I got out of bed, I banged on the door, hey, what are they? I had to go back in there and run in there and jump in bed and close the door, and hey, Costa, and hey, ¿qué pasó? And then, of course I wasn't there because I'd run back into the room. And then, they would, 5 minutes later, the guy would fall back to sleep, so I'm like, oh my God, so finally what we ended up doing was Kathy and I actually took our mattresses outside down the thing and just put them out there, in kind of an open area, because we couldn't stand the snoring of this guy. So anyway, that was a good trip except for the snoring experience. And we were traveling back on the bus, and I don't know how I ended up with the best bus in the seat in the bus, but I ended up on this one seat. I sat down, looked okay, but then it was just kind of held together with like baling wire, and so the whole thing kind of falls back like this. You're like, oh my gosh, so it doesn't sit up. You're just kind of like laying back here like this. And so then I had this guy come over that's, decides he wants to sit by me. And you could tell he was borracho, man, which he was just super drunk. He was kind of staggering out there. I'm like, yeah, bienvenidos, So he kind of sits next to me, and he's just passing out. And you're like, oh, just please, Lord, just don't have him start vomiting on me or stuff like this. And so the guy immediately falls to sleep. And I'm like, oh, this is just beautiful. So he's on, and then he decides that in order to be more comfortable, he just needs to lay up against the gringo as much as possible. So he's kind of laying on top of me like this, like, oh, this is very comfortable, and I'm like kind of shuttling like, hola, mijo, I don't want you to get familiar, maybe old drunk self over there, but you know, you didn't want to push him too hard because you knew he'd fall over in the aisle. So you're kind of come on over there a little bit like this. And Kathy's looking at me like, oh, this is the funniest thing ever. I'm like, yeah, well, you can sit by the drunk guy next time. But anyway, we made it up to the town, and then my next bus wasn't nearly that bad. And that was another story time.